for serious music. Yeah, for serious music. I'm so like, I feel like I have like the nightly news or something every time that music plays. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Happy Monday. Oh, happy Wednesday. I'm so confused as to what day it is. Today it's Wednesday, June 2nd. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day, everybody. I hope you're having a good Wednesday. I am having a decent Wednesday. I had a horrible Tuesday. I'll tell you that. Aww. I got smacked in the face with a tree branch in my eye, and it hurts so much. I can't even tell you.
I am beginning to become convinced that your backyard is a national forest. I just hope that there is not a boulder field and a body of water within 200 yards of your backyard. That's just my hope
bodies
for you.
Of water. I'm not getting abducted. Not getting abducted. Nope. Which reminds me, we really need to do that podcast, and I think we're going to have to do that on Monday because I have to revisit that, but that should be fun. So here we go. So content updates, guys. So here we go. Monday, which is June 7th, we are going to do L is for Lost, and we're going to talk about the national parks. But we're going to talk about the work of the one and only David Paulides.
And talk about Bigfoot.
I'm going to type it in there. I'll type it in the chat. David Paulides.
Because I can't type in the chat.
Okay, I'm so sorry that you can't do it.
It's not your fault.
Go into the moderator. You're a moderator. Go into the moderator link.
I don't remember my password.
All right. Okay, well, then you got to fix that. But you are a moderator on both sides. So David Paulides is his name, and it is Missing 411 is the name of his books and videos. So there's documentaries on YouTube. There's tons of stuff on YouTube about this. If you go into your podcast app and put his name in, you'll come up with a bunch of probably episodes about him or where he's been on as a guest. Fascinating guy. So we're going to talk about that and, all these mysterious missing person cases that seem to be happening in our national parks.
We're going to talk about Bigfoot.
Yosemite being the largest, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yosemite is the largest. Which is just fabulous. Okay, so that's the 7th. All right, so keeping up with our monthly podcast roundup kind of situation content thing that we started with our first one, which was Astray.
Situation type deal.
We're gonna keep doing this because Angie loves it that I give podcast recommendations and then she gets all into it and then we have to talk about it. So we do this on the last Monday of the month. This month, the last Monday is June 26th. So if you are interested in having a discussion about a podcast, I'm going to put it in the chat again. We are going to be discussing the Strictly Stalking podcast. There are two. There's Strictly Stalking, and then there's Strictly Stalking Australia. We are going to be talking about the Strictly Stalking one that's based in the United States. It is, I think it's got like 50-something episodes. So
it's got so many more. Season 2 has 72.
Okay, so it's got a huge number of episodes. They talk about a different stalking case like each episode or two. We'll be talking at least about season 1, probably, because I'll have to get through it. But we'll see how far I get. But give it a listen. We're probably going to touch on some of the crazier episodes of that and some of the overarching themes that keep happening with that. So that is going to be on June 26th. Strictly Stalking is our June podcast pick. And on that day, we will have the next round. We'll figure out what the next one is. So while we're talking about stalking, welcome to today's episode is our part 2 of I'll Take the L. The L is for Limerence. And this one's going to focus a little bit more on the whole stalking aspect, I believe, because we had lots of questions about it from Monday, where we talked about the actual concept of limerence. And we kind of hit a wall because we kind of saw that limerence is one of those things which is kind of like an obsessive infatuation, which can become obsessional, delusional, where you start thinking you might have a relationship with this person that doesn't really exist. And obviously from there, we were like, this is the stuff that stalking is made of. Yay! So this is where we ended up on stalking. We had a lot of questions about stalking after we started talking about this. So if you want to know how we ended up on part 2 being all about stalking, go back to Monday, part 1, and we talk about this whole like concept of delusional infatuation and what exactly is missing, that, or what switch gets flipped to go from like a crush on somebody to believing you're married to them. And we talked about a lot of the symptoms, signs of being a limerent, and what it meant to be an object of somebody who is limerent, a limerent object. So all of that's in the first part. So today we're really going to talk about that next, that what seems to me to be the logical progression from being limerent to jumping to stalking, except that not all limerents are stalkers and not all stalkers are limerents, but there seems to be a lot of overlap there.
Yes.
And I will say that the only thing I can think about or come to conclusion I can come to after looking at some of the articles we read and information is that there's really, it's like, aside from the obvious kind of like people who know each other in relationships kind of situation, I really just don't think there's any rhyme or reason to it in a lot of ways, and I said this last week, I said this on Monday, that it really frightens me that you don't even have to have any kind of meaningful contact or interaction with somebody for them to turn around and start stalking you. That really freaks me out. And that we see happen over and over again in the podcast we're going to be talking about at the end of the month, but also in some of the reading. So I wanted to, before we jumped into the meat of it, I wanted to talk a little bit about just like what stalking in general, like characteristics of it. And then apparently there's categories of stalking, which I'm just like, why do crazy people have to be so creative? Like, I don't understand. Why do there have to be so many different types? I don't know. But let's talk a little bit about the characteristics of it. So I did do a lot of, I did some research into this, and a lot of the scholarly research is really heady and doesn't really get to the meat of like what we really wanted to know. So I ended up going to just like places like Psych Central and Medicine Net and stuff that condenses it down. But all of the information that we're going to share today does come from actual scientific study that, someone else has looked at all the research. It's just, there's a lot out there, because when we start talking about this, you'll see that a lot of this behavior is linked with a lot of other types of personality and mental disorders. So it's really difficult to kind of like,
it's linked with a plethora of
mental disorders. So it's kind of hard to kind of whittle it down and say this is who it is or whatever. But let's talk a little bit about characteristics. So I'm just gonna look at this article from Psych Central, which is Characteristics of the Stalker. Know what to look for. And I also would like to also say that when doing this research, I found it both equally frightening and a little bit, I guess, I don't know, honestly, reassuring. But the sheer number of websites that come up from universities and colleges advising students against this is pretty enlightening. I mean, I get it. It's just that don't be shocked if you put Google stalking in Google or a question about stalking in Google and you come up with a million hits from different various university websites, like from their mental health or like health services sites, because this is information that is very relevant and they want to put out there very quickly. So let's just go to this. When you think of the word stalker, what comes to mind? Do you think of violence and vengefulness? Do you think of fear on the part of the stalker? Do you think about the stalker's lack of communication skills or even mental health problems? I would say that I don't think about their communication skills. I definitely think think of their mental health issues, but I usually just put it under the heading of crazy. Like I don't even No, I'm serious. Like I, you know what it is? Like, I don't want to know. Like, you want to stalk me, that's fine. I don't want to know. I don't need to go into your psyche. Like, I really don't. Maybe someone else does. I don't want to know. I just want you to stop stalking me. Many people would agree that the first thing that comes to mind when they hear the word stalker is violence and vengefulness. Only a rare number of people would consider a stalker fearful and lacking in social skills. Many sweet boys. Hey, Coffee Queen. Hey, Big Boss. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. Welcome. Many people agree the first thing comes is violence and vengefulness. I don't think it's always violence and vengefulness. I think some of it's just obsession. Like, not every stalker is violent. Let's just put that out there too. I mean, it's scary as hell, but it's not every single one of them is violent. Two reasons include mental health problems and lack of social skills. Okay, so I'm just going to say right now that I'm going heavily towards the former, not so much toward the latter. I think you have to have a lot of mental health issues that probably contribute to your personality, lack of social skills. So according to, I don't want to read the stats that it gives because I have updated ones to share, which I'll share in a little bit. So according to Marshall University's Women's Center, and like I said, lots of universities do this research because it's topical and relevant to what they see. A lot of it, you see a lot of stalking on college campuses, unfortunately. I've worked in academia for a very long time, and we see a lot of this. So the characteristics of the stalker can fall into 5 categories. And I think that these categories, I'm not going to say that these are definitive. I think there's probably like a lot of blurred lines between them. And depending on who you ask, it's 4, 5, 3, you know, they all are interrelated. So it says here, relationship. These stalkers tend to stalk previous partners and desire a relationship with the person. In some cases, the stalker in this category may desire a relationship with an acquaintance. Individuals who fit the stalker description and has had negative relationships in the past often meet criteria for a personality disorder, such as narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, or sociopathy. Or dependent personality disorder. I love how they throw that in there with like the antisocial and sociopathy, sociopath, like it's nothing. Like, I mean, I don't know about you. When I hear antisocial personality disorder and sociopathy, I'm like, okay, not good.
It's problematic.
Real problematic. So I would think like these are a lot of times I say like what we talked about on Monday with limerence probably fall into this category of relationship. They are seeking a relationship with these people who they are obsessing on. So and it also probably blurs into the second category that they have, which is obsessed. But it's like an obsession to have a relationship. So obsessed as this type of individual constantly thinks about the person they idolize. They may create a mental life involving the person and have a hard time imagining life without the person. Also sounds like limerence. You may have heard of the term Eradomania, which describes a delusion in which the person believes that someone, usually of a higher social status, be it a celebrity, a powerful person, is in love with him or her. It is likely that someone suffering from schizophrenia may fall prey to the eradomanic delusion. I have heard of that happening with schizophrenics. I've heard that. Okay, another category, rejected. Many stalkers have a history of challenging relationships and difficulty communicating with others. Some stalkers, especially a female, may meet the criteria for borderline personality disorder, in which rejection is often very difficult to cope with. This does not, however, describe all individuals with borderline personality disorder. However, it is likely that some individuals with this diagnosis could become a stalker due to a history of stormy relationships, roller coaster emotions, and unstable love affairs. All right, so one, I love that women are the only people that ever get diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. That's great. And I love that it's because she's hysterical and doesn't know how to get along with people. I mean, like, all right, I think this one's a little pointed, but let's say intelligent. Marshall University claims that stalkers are intelligent and carefully plan their stalking behavior. Someone who falls into this category could meet criteria for sociopathy. Great. Sociopaths are adept at planning their attack and controlling others with charm or acting glib. Yay.
Motivated. That was a theme.
Yes.
That was definitely a theme, a recurring theme in what I heard today. in that podcast.
It's a recurring theme in a lot of it. A lot of these people are able, especially if there's somebody who is somebody who they know.
The system.
Yeah.
They're patient. They know how to work the system. They know how to do their research. Definitely. They
know how to get information out of other people that they might need. And especially if they are the kind that are acquaintance stalkers or casual acquaintance stalkers, these people, put the charm on and, you don't even realize that.
Well, imagine being stalked by a perfect stranger. How did that woman get into David Letterman's house?
I have no idea. She's probably was able to talk her way in that way. And motivated. Most stalkers believe their object of desire is the only person they could ever love and tend to be motivated to pursue based on this type of thinking. Now, I don't know about you, Angie, but after I've read those, and even as I'm reading them now again, they all sort of kind of fall into that category, limerence. Like they all sort of come up with that. They all fall into what we talked about on Monday. Like believing that they're the only one for you. The constant thinking, obsessive thinking about that. The charming, but these are all like the emotionally affected by someone else's, how the object feels affects you. Like all of that ties in. So maybe that's kind of the part where we're missing is that like that stalkers have all these qualities, but there must be something else that tips them. And maybe I'm thinking it might be the compounding mental illnesses.
Well, but it's like we said on Monday, like I think most people experience limerent feelings, but most people don't go on to become stalkers. And then you went on to say it's like a spectrum.
Right.
And there's a point where normal people can stop. Right. Normal people with limerent feelings, those limerent feelings will fizzle out. Those limerent feelings will go on to somebody else. They just want to be in love. They just want to be in love with love or whatever. I am a person who loves to be in love with love, but I don't stalk people, I don't harm people.
Right.
And then there are people who don't care about the harm. And then, stalkers have different motivations than person who's just strictly has limerent feelings. Or
they also can rationalize their behavior a lot differently.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I think. So Big Boss says, all of what you mentioned, my uncle has done. He was born with mild to mid mental disability. He was very intelligent when it came to this. It's almost like, having like what they call like idiot savants. Like there's something they're really good at, or they can, and it might just be that they have the personality traits that allow them to be really good at this. Like, they think in that way, or they are able to, charm people into giving them the information or the tool. Like, I can't even imagine like, how people get information out of other people.
It's being a good liar. I mean, good liars are good liars. So being able to manipulate, being a good liar, you're misrepresenting yourself anyway. Just being good at research. And then another the overarching theme of this podcast, right, is your personal safety, the things that you do to keep yourself safe, right? So they're doing research on you. They're following your social media and they're finding out who you are, where you go, who you go there with, what those people do, and they put the pieces together. It's not difficult when you put your whole life out on social media. All they do is read the book and they learn everything they need to know about you.
And even if they're following you or something, how many of us ever notice if the same person's around every single day, right? I mean,
right.
Oh, Big Boss, don't worry about it. I just don't like that word. I knew what you meant, though. I don't like using it. That's all good. I use it every now and again, but I forget. It's all good. No harm done. Let's talk about the common personality characteristics really quickly, which to me don't really sound like personality characteristics, more like personality disorders.
But these as well, like, become, I don't know. I think this is where the shift.
This is where the shift.
Being limerent to becoming abusive and harmful and stalkerish.
Yeah. This is an interesting list. So narcissistic behaviors, selfishness, history of domestic violence, inability to cope with rejection, obsessive, controlling, and compulsive, impulsivity, suffering from delusions or severe mental illness that interferes with perception of reality, jealousy, manipulative behavior, sexually maladaptive behaviors, deceptiveness, socially awkward, uncomfortable, or isolated, has a history of falling in love instantly, depends on others for a sense of self-worth, low self-esteem, and temperamentalness. And it's important to keep in mind that stalkers are not always individuals who are suffering from mental health or personality disorders, but that possibility is very high. Most stalkers fit the criteria of sociopaths and narcissists. They are charmers. They have a way with words, although their words are often shallow and insincere. And they sometimes have a sex appeal or attractiveness that blinds victims to their true intent. The difficulty lies in trying to determine if someone is a stalker, and if so, what type of stalker they are. So just to follow that up, I learned that there are different categories in terms of the justice system and how they can, and this leads into there's some general classifications that the law kind of sticks to this. This is coming from the University of New Mexico's Judicial Education Center, and they're telling us the categories. So it says here, stalking, like domestic violence, stalking is not limited to certain types of individuals, racial, ethnic, or cultural backgrounds, education levels, or socioeconomic status. So anybody can be a stalker. Stalkers come from different backgrounds and have different personalities and approaches to their behaviors. Social science has developed various ways of classifying or categorizing. So their underlying motives tend to be either simply obsessional, which is the most common type. They are usually a male and the focus is usually an ex-wife, ex-lover, or former boss. In intimate relationships, the stalking frequently starts before the breakup and can sometimes result from the stalker feeling like he or she has been mistreated by the victim. There is love obsessional. In this type of stalking, the stalker is a stranger or casual acquaintance to the victim. Nonetheless, stalker becomes obsessed and begins a pattern of behavior as a means of making the victim aware of his or her existence. High-profile examples of this include when celebrities or public figures become the target. And then there's Eradomania, which we already talked about. The stalker incorrectly believes the victim is in a relationship with him or her. And then this is an interesting one. False victimization syndrome involves an individual who either consciously or subconsciously seeks to play the role of the victim. As such, the individual may invent a detailed tale in which he or she claims to be the stalking victim. In reality, however, the would-be victim is sometimes the actual stalker, and the alleged stalker is actually the real victim. And this is an extremely rare form of stalking, but I swear to God, every fifth Lifetime movie is made from this.
Yes.
Like, seriously. And then there are also you can define them by their class of you also can define them by their relationship to their victims. So there's an intimate relationship, which is the stalker and victim have had a former relationship with each other. Oftentimes the stalker seeks to reestablish the relationship with the victim. Or there's non-intimate, which is the one that freaks me out more. Here, the stalker and victim have absolutely no interpersonal relationship with one another. Rather, the stalker may select and focus on the victim following a brief encounter with each other or merely after observing them. Frightening. The victim is often at a loss to readily identify the stalker once he or she has become aware of the conduct. Non-intimate stalking is further divided into two categories. Organized, the relationship between the stalker and victim is characterized by one-way anonymous communications from the stalker to the victim. The stalker is methodical and calculating such that the victim usually doesn't know the identity of the stalker. And then delusional, the relationship between the stalker and victim is based exclusively on the stalker's psychological fixation on the victim. The stalker's delusion is falsely believing that he or she has a relationship or some other connection with the victim. So
terrifying.
It's like almost like that Eradomania, but the person has no idea who you are, but they think that you think that they are in love with you. It's frightening, very frightening.
It's terrifying.
So that's the kind of situation that we're dealing with when we talk about it. And, it's interesting because I've seen this also. There was the other article that we talked about was the difference between healthy and obsessive love, right? I'm very sure that a stalker actually thinks what they're feeling is love. I'm sure they do, because they have probably a very diluted sense of what love is.
And they feel that it's healthy love.
Yes, they feel it's healthy. So the difference between healthy and obsessive love is that with the latter, the feelings of infatuation become extreme, expanding to the point of obsession. So again, I think this is where limerence kind of goes to that far end of the spectrum where we're getting to like possibly problems here. It says that obsessive love and jealousy that's delusional is a symptom of mental health problems and is a symptom that occurs in about 0.1% of adults. Okay. Individuals who suffer from delusional jealousy often interpret minor experiences like a coworker saying hello to their spouse or romantic partner looking at a passerby as positive proof that their loved one is being unfaithful. So we've seen that a lot too in the media. So, okay. So aside from delusional jealousy, obsessive love can be differentiated from healthy love relationship by having addictive qualities. For example, the person who suffers from obsessive love tends to want to spend excessive time with their love object. They think about them excessively, engage in behaviors that put them in touch with their love object to an extreme degree. They can be controlling of money or food in extreme cases, and then start stalking or using violence. So this is kind of like the situation that precipitates a certain type of stalking, which would be relationship stalking. And then they say the process that mental health professionals engage in to obsess obsessive love includes evaluating the person to ensure that mental disorders that may present with this symptoms are considered and treated if present. So this is a co-diagnoses with this are schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, delusional disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, a personality disorder, or organic brain syndrome. And organic means caused by a medical condition. Those are kind of the other issues we see compounding on this. So it's so treatment often involves psychotherapy, couples counseling. I mean, this is where really any underlying mental illness should be treated with medication if appropriate. Right. Okay, so that's kind of like the relationship end of it, like where your person, they're possibly, they're kind of possibly in that position where they could potentially go that way if something happens. I mean, to me, if you're controlling someone to the point where you're controlling food, you're hyper jealous, that's somebody who's probably not going to let go of that relationship very easily. Yeah. And then the Vice article was hysterical. Again, we're talking about, so they talk about David Letterman's Stalker. The other type of stalker is psychotic stalkers, like David Letterman's stalker, Margaret Mary Ray, who told people she was Letterman's wife and the mother of his child. Psychotic stalkers are disconnected from reality and can have detailed delusions about being in relationships with specific celebrities, strangers, colleagues, or acquaintances. The person gave a man she treated who met a woman in an office coffee shop where they exchanged just a few words, and the delusional thinking was, I knew that she wanted to talk to me even though she acted like she didn't. Yeah. I saw her car parked on the left side of the street instead of the right side of the street. That's a special message to me. Jesus Christ. So
didn't somebody else in there, another thing in there was something about I've seen enough romantic comedies.
Oh God, yeah.
To tell me a nice guy always ends up in a jam.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's the difference. It's like What's the difference between being stalked by an ex-partner versus a stranger? Representations, this is what we talked about, of unhealthy relationship dynamics in pop culture can blur our understanding of the differences between romantic persistence and threatening obsession. Rom-coms teach us that it's desirable for guys to say, hire a private investigator to track us down. If there's something about Mary, blare music late at night outside our windows, say anything, and generally follow women until we finally agree to date. And they gave Sawaria and other Bollywood films. I've not seen that, so I don't know. As the stalker at the center of Caroline Kepsner's bestseller, You, says to justify himself, I've seen enough romantic comedies to know that romantic guys like me are always getting into jams. Let me just say right now that those two books are frightening as hell, and the series is also frightening. Good stuff, frightening. But in reality, stalking is a form of abuse, and current or former intimate partners are both the most common type of stalker and often the most dangerous. So as of 2014, 60.8% of women who responded to a survey reported they were currently or previously in a romantic relationship with their stalker. And research shows that up to 80% of people in abusive relationships have been stalked within that relationship. So,
I can't even imagine.
Frightening stuff here. Frightening stuff. So this one guy's talking about how he's only stalked partners and former partners. And for him, he talks about it as being like an obsessive compulsive impulse. So his impulses, which might start with obsessive text messaging, then grow, have been connected with anxiety and jealousy during or just after the end of a relationship. He also struggles with beliefs he admits might be considered misogynistic, such as that women are inherently liars who can't be trusted, and often believes that his former partners have been sending him mixed messages. For instance, when one ex didn't ask him to delete nude photos of her, he interpreted it as a sign that she didn't consider him dangerous, rather than a sign that she was avoiding further contact. She called me a stalker, then didn't treat me like one, he says. God, this scares me so much. I swear to God. I feel like you can't, as a woman, you just can't win ever.
Can't win. I appreciate, the only thing I can say to that is I appreciate his openness and his honesty. Like, he doesn't understand. Is he willing to learn? Like, that's really, really dangerous thinking. Why doesn't he understand? Why doesn't he understand that no means no? And what can be done about that? Like, where do we start? Where do we start educating people about consent? Like, when does that happen? I've seen people start, I was actually just recently, somebody said something to me about consent as sex education. Like when people are, you can't teach my 5-year-old about sex education. I was one of those people. But when it's discussed as like teaching a 5-year-old about consent, and like even you can tell your parents, like, please don't touch me. Like, teaching kids about consent is how you teach a grown man that no means no.
Yeah.
Is teaching a 5-year-old that you can tell your parents or a teacher or another student that no, you can't touch me. You can't touch my hand. Not just you can't touch my privates, but you can't touch me
at all. Yeah. So this article is actually very good. It says, so this is from Vice magazine. It's called The Psychology Behind Stalking. I will put it in the description. It says, so it's comforting to believe that we can easily spot a stalker. They're the skeezy, crazed strangers in trench coats. You're right. Do obviously disturbing things like follow women home and track down their personal details, right? Actually, people who exhibit the obsessive behavior associated with stalking, including following someone, sending unwanted gifts or communication, and staking out at someone's home or work, very much more widely than cultural tropes portray, partially because of misleading stereotypes. Gary Walker, whose name has been changed, didn't admit to himself that he was a stalker until an ex-girlfriend used that word about him. Only then did the 25-year-old realize that the things he'd done in their relationship and others, like calling excessively when it was clearly unwanted and contacting his girlfriend's family, were obsessive. And then he says, the thing about this obsessive behavior is it's equivalent to a panic attack. It's an existential crisis. Walker says of moments when he's fixating on someone who isn't reciprocating, it feels like someone you love just died. According to Michelle Galita, a clinician and psychology professor at City University of New York, who focuses on therapeutic treatments for stalkers, there's no such thing as a typical stalker. She's worked with people ranging from high-functioning judge with borderline personality disorder to a person who silently stalked his victim for 2 years before attempting to kill her. Rather than a disorder itself, stalking is a behavior that falls under the umbrella of symptoms for various disorders. According to a 2012 study published in Aggression and Violent Behavior, motivations for stalking included delusional belief in romantic destiny, a desire to reclaim a prior relationship, a sadistic urge to torment the victim, or a psychotic over-identification with the victim and the desire to replace him or her. Jesus. And stalkers can fall under a variety of diagnoses, including psychotic disorders, personality disorders such as narcissistic personality disorder, and delusional disorders such as Eradomania. Yes. According to her research, people with substance use disorders are also prone to stalking. Okay. There are certain characteristics that pop up again and again among stalkers. According to research, for example, in 2014, a survey published by the CDC, 80% of stalking survivors reported that they knew their stalker in some way. There's also some evidence that stalkers are often men in their 30s, and their targets are frequently women in their late teens and early 20s, although not always. Other studies have found that anger and insecurity, often stemming from childhood, are also common among stalkers, as is impulsiveness. She's observed that stalkers generally have very narrow interests, very little leisure activity. Of course not. They're spending all their time stalking you. We went off for a second again. Bummer. Great. Very little leisure activity, variable other social interactions. So these tend to be their primary relationships. This guy says, I had no idea what I was doing with my life, socially and intellectually inept, no life experience, no guidance other than my critical mother. God, he's got mommy issues too. I had nothing going on and no friends. What was left to do but obsess over this? Awesome.
Which oftentimes a narcissist's number one enabler is their mother.
Their mother, yep.
Says and this guy says he identifies as a narcissist, which, okay, so if you identify as a narcissist, then you wouldn't feel like your best friend just died because you wouldn't care.
Yeah, no.
So I don't understand.
I don't know. It says, let's see. Even someone with all these predispositions may never engage in stalking. Rather, stalking behavior is often triggered by a life event that's difficult to cope with, such as a breakup, firing, arrest, or rejection. During one of the breakups, I remember, it's painful to think about this, knocking on her dorm room for at least
what
too
up, that
long.
Hi guy.
Hey, hi guy, what's up? Yeah, so it sounds like even with a limerent person, they need to be pushed to this point where something's going to happen that triggers it. So whether it's them being rejected completely by either the object or even someone else that doesn't factor. I mean, they mentioned like firing, like, so it could be anything like that. Any like major trauma to their psyche or ego in their life could trigger this now to like fixate on somebody. Jesus, this is frightening. It says here, while ex-partner stalkers are responsible for more violence during stalking and form the single largest stalker group, they're not the majority of stalkers out there in the community, and stranger and acquaintance stalkers' behavior can be just as, if not more, persistent and damaging as that of former partners, even if it does not involve physical violence, as in many cases. Ooh, great. As most stalkers have,
I feel compelled to say, because like all of these things that we've read and everything that I've heard, like stalkers can be men or women.
Yes, they can
and
be.
Victims of stalking can be men or women.
Yes,
and men can be stalked by men and or women. Like, and I feel like I was talking about this with my nephew today. Like, I feel like men just don't come forward with this because, again, there's like this whole idea that a man should be able to just protect himself. But
well, I mean, they also have a fear of not being believed. Like, are
right.
they going to be like, who's going to believe? Like, I mean, like, I think hopefully now we're in a place where we actually would be more open-minded because we're more knowledgeable that these things happen. But like, you know, I could see somebody like, no one's going to believe me that my ex-wife or ex-girlfriend or some random woman I met at work one day is now stalking me. And that goes into that one statement that I read was that desire to replace them or become them. That's where I think we see some of that when we see like male on male stalking. That's not in a romantic way, but just like in a fixation, or even women on women, like, and that we've seen come out in the female we've seen in popular culture where they want one to replace the other one. Like that's a common trope, I think, in some of these, like in this subgenre of films or whatever you want to call it. I don't know.
Well, and I think stalking a man too also it can be like there's other things that you can do to a man besides, you know, terrorize him like you would terrorize a woman, like stealing a man's identity, stealing a man's money, you know, those kind of things happen to men as well. And I just like everything is always couched in a woman and her vulnerability and exactly, fear of retaliation. Exactly. And I just would like to put that out there, like I just want to, because men don't come forward as much.
We recognize that this is a universal. This can happen to anybody. It can be done by anybody, and it can
done to anybody.
So there's no, like it said, there's no profile in terms of who can commit or be a victim of. It just so happens that the majority typically are men in their, you know, men in their 30s typically. But I think that, again, like a lot of stats that we see, there's just not a preponderance of reporting in certain ways. So, you know, there might be way more women stalking other people than we know that, but men don't come forward and report them. So that high guy. I had a friend that was a female friend only. She started stalking me back in the early 90s. It was very not cool. She don't go out, but ruined a friend. Yeah. I mean, I was telling Angie before this started that when I was in high school, I was dating not even high school. I think it was in 8th or 9th grade. So I was like 15 maybe. And I was dating somebody who I had met through my best friend at the time was dating his friend. And he went to a different school. Was a different town, and we didn't date for very long, but like we broke up, and the next thing I know, he's harassing me constantly. Like I had my own phone line, and so he would call at all hours of the night and day, leaving really, really awful, violent, nasty messages. He would leave notes in the front door of my house or the back window of my bedroom where I would find them. He'd put stickers on the front door or someplace where I would know. I'd know he would send, but they were from him. And it was just like, we didn't even date for that long. We were like 14 years old, 15 years old. Like, you know, and even then, like, that's like, you know, they thought that this was okay. And it's just like, and then like I said to her, and I was in college and I was home for some break or something. And his best friend called out of the blue, like not talked to this person in like 6-7 years, called my house to talk to me. And I was like, what the hell? Like, you know, first of all, I was like, is somebody watching me that they know that I'm home? Like, and second, and then even after that, while I was in college, I would get these really random, weird phone calls every now and again. So it's just like, you know, the length. And then I remember, like I told her, I looked him up at one point to see what he was up to. And he's married. He was married with kids. So maybe he lost interest. I have no idea. But I mean, it's just like, it just makes no rhyme or reason. It makes no sense to me, you know? And like, I guess I can understand that maybe he felt rejected or something, but like, why harass, like, you know, so you want to make me feel bad? Is that what it is?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, but then why, like, it's 6 years later, you're still not over it. 7 years later, you're still not over it. It's like, I don't know. Like, that's the part that freaks me out is that it's just like it can go on for so long. Like I would think, I know for me, I would get bored after a certain point. Like there's only so much you can think about somebody without getting any. I mean, and let me just stress here that I never talked to him. Like even when he called, I let my answer pick up the phone. Like I never talked. I never had any interaction with this person. So he was getting absolutely no oxygen from me. So to be that persistent is amazing. It's amazing to me. That's dedication right there.
Motivation. They're motivated.
I don't know. Like I really don't. It's frightening to think about. And then, you know, the part that's also frightening is knowing that so many, like we talked, like you had mentioned before, that so many of these people are have like this sociopathy, or, you know, have like this charming personality where they can talk their way into or out of things, where nobody, I guarantee if you ask people, they'd never think that this was the type of person who would behave this way. You know, they can charm their way into anything or out of anything. And I think they play the system really well because they can manipulate. Like how many times have we heard, you know, that you know, a stalker gets arrested, they get put on probation, they're good for like whatever the duration of their probation is, and as soon as that probation period ends, like clockwork, within like an hour they're back on it, like, you know, over and over and over again. There's not a lot that can be done to really kind of deal with this. Like you can get a restraining order, and, you know, that works to a certain extent, but, you know, you have to be able to prove that you need one. And a lot of times these, especially if they're intelligent and motivated, they will do things where it's hard to provide the proof that they're doing these things. Especially if it's somebody who's a stranger. Like, I mean, probably not as bad if you know them, if your relationship, like divorce, ever have like a history with the person, but like for those casual, like not stranger kind of situations, it can be impossible to even, you know, something's going on, you have no idea who it is. It can be impossible to provide any kind of evidence in order to even get the assistance that you get and need. And then once you get it, how much can people do? Like the police can only do so much.
Well, what I learned today, because I learned a lot. Number one, like, because if you're being stalked by somebody, they're going to contact you. Like, it's going to escalate and they're going to contact you. So I think, I mean, just looking at the clock, like, I think this is a perfect transition here. Like, what can you do if you're being stalked? Like, there are limited things that you can do, but there are things you can do. So, like, number one, like we talked about earlier, don't post what is it, geotag? Don't geotag your pictures on social media, or they suggest wait like 20, 30 minutes after you're gone from where you're at. Like just wait a while and post afterwards. Don't accept friend requests from people you don't know on social media if you're concerned. And
always go with the county. Probably.
Always go with the county. As soon as you start feeling uncomfortable from somebody's interactions with you, start documenting it. Like the one theme, another overarching theme from the podcast that I was listening today, all the people who talked about their experience, of course, a lot of the people were stalked over years, before stalking was a term, before there was any real legislation on the books. Right, and a lot of people were from Los Angeles, and it appears that LA County, they just don't care. So they just don't care. So you have to build your own case. So if you can find out who it is, find out everything you can about that person and do your own research and document every single thing you can. Don't go places alone, and tell everyone. And a lot of people aren't going to believe you, and a lot of people are going to victim shame you. And you have to lean on the people who support you when you get victim shamed, because it's going to happen. There's always going to be people out there who are going to tell you that it's your fault, and it's not your fault. So don't believe that, because it's not your fault, but lean in hard on those who support you and continue to tell people that this is what's going on with you when you're out in public. If you see that person and you know, it's because who knows, you know, like you could be out to dinner with your friends and you see that person and you have a panic attack. Your friends are going to need to know why, you know, and especially if you're with your friends who care about you and who support you and understand that this is real and this is really happening to you, they'll need to be able to support you. So those are just a few things. And then, you know, there's people out there, there are organizations out there who can also provide resources for
we'll put links in the description. Can you imagine being stalked for like a decade? I mean, oh my God.
I can't.
How exhausting on every level.
And then to only get 2 years reprieve.
Right? Any advice on get people to believe you as opposed to those people who think they're always being stalked? Don't remember the term paranoid.
Listen to Strictly Stalking.
I think that any of us getting to get people to believe you. Okay, so here's the thing. I think with those stalkers who are especially the ones who are charming and, you know, it's probably, you see this more with people who are, it's relationship and know they're stalkers. They could behave one way to somebody and a totally different way to you, the object of their stalking. So like when they're putting on all that charm, people are like, oh my God, he would never do, or she would never do that. She's such a nice person. She doesn't have it in her to do that. What are you talking about? Or maybe you're just interpreting things wrong. And I think the bottom line here is that if you feel uncomfortable by something that somebody's saying or doing to you, that's all it needs to be. That's all that needs to be said. And I think as people and friends or acquaintances or just other human beings, when somebody says that somebody's doing something to them that makes them uncomfortable, we just have to accept that that's what it is. And if somebody, even if you know the person and you don't find that to be uncomfortable, that's great. That's you. But other people find that interpret things differently. And we don't know everybody as well as we think we do.
We know that.
Unless we live with them. And even then, we don't even know them like you see this all the time. So just because your relationship with somebody is wonderful and you just think they're the greatest friend you've ever had, and he or she's no bad bone in their body, doesn't mean that that's the side of their personality that they're showing to other people. Right. And I think that it's important to remember when we talk about this type of behavior and these types of people is that, we have to keep remembering that there are probably other issues happening there. There are other personality disorders happening there. There are other mental disorders happening there that very much make it so that they can present one face to somebody and another face to somebody else, or that they're in a cycle where once their behavior is this way now and then it changes later or something like that. So, if I don't personally, I've never met anybody who constantly thinks they're being stalked. Gang stalking. Okay. So that's a whole other thing. And we can talk about that. We can talk about that in a minute. But just to stay on like real stalking for a second, again, it's, I just forgot my train of thought, but I was saying is that people who feel uncomfortable by the actions, words, or even presence of somebody else, you just have to trust your gut. And if somebody is telling you how they feel, then you have to go with that. Even if it's something that's completely abnormal, totally opposite than what you feel, you just have to, be supportive in some way. Because how awful would you feel if something happened and you didn't believe that person? So I think that, you know, we have to stop victim shaming. And I'm not saying and I'm not saying that people don't lie about things that happen to them and not, but like, you know, let's try to give folks the benefit of the doubt most of the time. And I'm talking about as victims, not as perpetrators.
Scott, I think the difference between getting somebody to believe you with an individual stalker versus gang stalking is an individual stalker is going to do things like text you hundreds of times, email you constantly. They're going to show up at your job. They're going to stalk your Facebook. They're going to stalk your social media. They're going to contact your friends. They're going to do things like that. You're going to, if you are building your case against an individual stalker who's stalking you like that, what I learned today, at least the few podcasts that I listened to today, every single person was able to build their case doing that, gathering emails, gathering dates, gathering times. This person contacted me on these days. This person left me 100 phone calls in 70 minutes on this day. 150 phone calls in 90 minutes on this day. Like that. That's how you show somebody this one individual is stalking me. Gang stalking, that's where you're like, those two people walked by and they looked at me.
Right. Well,
that car's been sitting outside of my house for 6 hours.
My understanding of gang stalking is that most of the time, or a large majority of it, is that these are people who think they're being stalked by like a government agency, some kind of nefarious something that they really can't specify. And if they can, it's for very specific reasons that may or may not be actually realistic or based in reality, grounded in reality. Like everything I've ever seen about gang stalking, people who claim to be victims of it are always basically claiming that they're being victimized by a government agency, some shadow government agency that are not directly coming into contact with them, but are doing things like beaming electromagnetic radiation into their homes, parking outside their houses, like
except for that one guy who did get killed.
Which one?
Except for that one guy who did get killed. The what's his face from that chapter I'll send you the link to the one guy from that chapter.
I probably saw it, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
But like gang stalking to me seems to be its own kind of mental illness. I hate to say that. I really do. But you know, that I think gang stalking seems to be more rooted into like a conspiracy theory kind of mindset, a paranoia kind of mindset. So I would think that you know, if somebody's claiming to be gang stalked, I don't know what you can do with them other than listen to them. Just like, I mean, to me, it's not grounded in reality. I think there are very few regular people, like, and there always seem to be regular people in just regular like jobs doing regular things. I think there are very few regular Joes walking around that the government really feels like the need to intimidate, stalk, and harass and victimize in the way that these people are claiming that they are. And again,
and if it's very hard. A lot harder to prove than a single obsessed stalker.
Absolutely.
That's for sure.
I mean, but these are people who claim that they have implants inside their bodies. Like there's all sorts of tinfoil hat stuff going on there that it's hard.
We actually wear tinfoil hats one day.
Can we do a show where we actually wear tinfoil hats? We could probably wear it on Monday for the alien abduction. So gang stalking, I don't really put into the same category because to me it's like on the same level as conspiracy theories and like shadow government stuff and that kind of thing. I really have yet to maybe it's that chapter one, but I don't remember it. But I have yet to really see an incidence of gang stalking that was like real in terms of just I don't know. I see a lot of circumstantial, coincidental evidence, but I never see anything like, oh my God, the government's really out to get this guy. Like, oh my God. But it's almost the same thing when you think about it, because when you talk to when you hear some of these gang stalking people talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
They will talk to you about like, this black car was parked across the street for the same time. And they like make these connections. So it's almost like they fall into that category of stalking where they're the stalker and they want to be the victim. Because they're building connections of things that they see, but not anybody else, right? So it's really difficult to take that seriously. I would be taking it more seriously in terms of, oh my gosh, I think my friend has a mental disorder. Like, I hate to be like that, but I don't know. Like, I would
really believe it. They really
I'm sure they do. I'm not every person who I've ever seen talk about gang stalking as a victim, they absolutely 100% believe that they're being victimized by something. I also feel like they absolutely 100% come across and allude to like there being other issues in their lives that they're like putting this on that. So it's hard. It's hard to take that and put it under the same umbrella. But yeah, I mean, as far as like a single person being stalked by somebody, I think what Angie said about in terms of compiling as much evidence as you can, especially since you're the person who knows when things like when the case that I had, like I knew that this thing that was left at my front door, what it meant. Like I knew what it meant. Other people might not know what it means, but I knew what it was there for. I knew what it was trying to say. I knew what they were telling me when they did that. So, that's what makes it difficult, is that a lot of times these people are so crafty enough to like send these subtle messages that don't seem to mean anything to other people other than the intended target, which is awful. And it really makes you feel like really makes you feel unsafe and targeted. Like I can't stress enough how badly it made me feel. That chapter game. I'm gonna have to look at that. I probably watched it, but
yeah, it's an older one.
Okay, I've probably seen it. I probably just don't remember it. But I don't know. But this to me is a very scary topic. Again, because it could just be anybody. Like that's the part that freaks me out. It could be anyone.
It happening anybody. To us all right now.
We don't know. Gosh.
I know.
Awful.
And here I am, just a wholesome Midwestern girl who makes eye contact with everybody. And speaks to everybody. Like I hate my mask. I go out and I wear my mask and I smile bigger so you can see, because that's just who I am. And now I'm like,
and now you're like, I don't want to leave my house.
I don't want to leave my house. I don't want anybody to know I exist anymore,
Well, if you have terrible luck, your stalker could end up being the pizza delivery guy. That to me is the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life. That is just awful. I'm sorry. That's awful. If you didn't listen last week, one of the women who was being stalked by somebody, who after she thought she got away, after he was on probation, got out, didn't hear from him, her husband's name and
everything,
house, everything in her husband's
credit
name,
cards,
nothing with her own name. Orders a freaking pizza. The guy delivers it. It's her fucking stalker. Not because he found out where she lived, but because he happened to be the pizza delivery guy. Random. Completely random. I would shit myself. Like, oh my God.
But instead, she got him put in jail.
Yeah, after almost being kidnapped. So not the great W that we think it is. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I'll give it to her. She managed to get the guy to let her answer the phone twice.
True.
Like, what a dingbat. He let her answer the phone twice, and she got code to her mom to call the cops, and then the cops call. She's like, oh, hey, that house on Cloud Boulevard.
Right? Jesus Christ. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, again, just to reiterate that we will be doing another discussion on stalking at the end of the month on, what did I say, June 28th?
Yes.
The last Monday of the month is June 28th. We will be doing we chose the last Monday of the month to be our podcast of the month kind of discussion. So we will be doing the Strictly Stalking podcast again, if you're interested in playing along, listening along with us. Many episodes. We're going to try to hit some of the more insane ones probably, or the ones that stick to us, and then just generally do another kind of discussion like this where we talk about some of the various similarities, the frustrations, the oh my God, can't believe things that go on. There are plenty of them. I mean, there are some underlying similarities between a lot of these things. And I did say I had some up-to-date stats that I wanted to share. So let me pull those up really quickly. Okay, so it's an estimated 6 to 7.5 million people are stalked in a 1-year period in the United States. That's a lot. 1 in 6 women and 1 in 17 men have experienced stalking in their lifetime. Using a less conservative definition of stalking, which considers any amount of fear, little fearful, somewhat fearful, or very fearful, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 13 men reported being a victim of stalking in their lifetimes. About half of all victims of stalking indicated that they were stalked before the age of 25. Stalkers use many tactics, including approaching the victim or showing up in places when the victim didn't want them to be there, making unwanted telephone calls, leaving the victim unwanted text or voice messages, watching or following the victim from a distance, or spying on the victim with a listening device, camera, or GPS.
Jeez.
Majority of stalking victims are stalked by someone they know. Many victims are stalked by a current or former intimate partner or by an acquaintance. People age 18 to 24 have the highest rate of stalking victimization. Almost half of stalking victims experience at least one unwanted contact per week. 11% of stalking victims have been stalked for 5 years.
Coffin Queen. Thanks for stopping by.
5 years or more. 1 in 4 report being stalked through the use of some form of technology, such as email or instant messaging. 10% of victims report being monitored with GPS systems.
Oh my
GPS
gosh.
And 8%, right? 8% report being monitored through video or digital cameras or listening devices. 46% of stalking victims fear not knowing what will happen next. 29% of stalking victims fear the stalking will never stop. 1 in 8 employed stalking victims lose time from work as a result of their victimization, and more than half lose 5 days of work or more. 1 in 7 stalking victims move as a result of their victimization. Stalking victims suffer higher rates of depression, anxiety, insomnia, and social dysfunction than people in the general population. Completely understood.
Yes.
2/3 of stalkers pursue their victims at least once per week, many daily, using more than one method. 78% of stalkers use more than one means of approach. Weapons are used to harm or threaten victims 1 out of 5 cases. Almost 1/3 of stalkers have stalked before. Intimate partner stalkers frequently approach their targets and their behaviors escalate quickly. Stalking is a crime under the laws of 50 states, the District of Columbia, the U.S. territories, and the federal government. Less than 1/3 of states classify stalking as a felony upon first offense. More than a half of states classify stalking as a felony upon second or subsequent offense, or when the crime involves aggravating factors. And then aggravating factors may include possession of a deadly weapon, violation of a court order or condition of probation, parole, victim being under 16 years, or the same victim as in prior occasions. So there's a wide loophole of ways to get around that, especially with it not being a felony, which probably doesn't carry very long, lengthy prison sentence or anything like that.
Well, even the felony sentence doesn't carry a long sentence.
2 years or something like that. It's nothing.
It depends on the aggravating factors. Like sentencing is, and every state is different. Some people get 2 years, some people get 10 years, some people get 5 years.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
It sounds like the UK has much more resources for victims of stalking.
Yeah, they take this way more seriously than we do. Yeah. I don't know why they do, but they do. They are much more on the ball of this than. I mean, I'd have to look at international numbers. Like, I don't know if it's more prevalent there, but it sounds like, 7.5 million Americans every year. I mean, like, Jesus, that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
So yeah. So I don't know.
I'm interested to know how many convictions there are every year for stalking. I'm interested to know how many stalking victims lose their jobs, because that was a theme. I'm going to lose my job. I had to tell my boss about this. One lady said she told her boss and she just outright got fired.
Why? Because they didn't want to have to deal with that. They didn't want to have to deal.
Yeah, and there's no protection. There's no protection for victims of stalking. In situations like that, it's not a crime to get fired because you have a stalker who might show up at your job and put everybody in danger. There's absolutely no protection for that. And PTSD, like a lot of people had lost their job because of their mental health. Like
yeah.
I can't even imagine. Like, spend 10 years wondering if you're gonna, come home and your pets are gone, your house is burned down, or.
It says here, American Indian, Alaska Native women are significantly more likely to report being stalked than women of other racial or ethnic backgrounds. More research is needed to establish the degree of variance and determine how much of the variance may be explained by demographic, social, and environmental factors. I think personally that in places like Indian reservations and in Alaska, it's just like it's like the wild, wild west out there, man. People just don't care. It says, although stalking is a gender-neutral crime, 78% of stalking victims are female, and most stalking perpetrators, 87%, are male. Let's see if I can find. Yep.
I wonder though, like I don't know. I feel like those numbers are. Stalking is a self-reported crime.
About 12% of all stalking cases result in criminal prosecution, and about a quarter of female stalking victims and about a tenth of male stalking victims obtain restraining orders against their stalkers. Of all victims with restraining orders, 69% of the women and 81% of the men said their stalkers violated the order. More research is needed on the effectiveness of formal and informal justice system interventions in stalking cases. There's a strong link between stalking and other forms of violence in intimate relationships. 81% of women who were stalked by a current or former husband or cohabitating partner were also physically assaulted by that partner, and 31% were also sexually assaulted by that partner. Yeah, let's see.
This is so much sad.
It is. Statistics. It says 30% of female stalking victims and 20% of male stalking victims seek psychological counseling as a result of their victimization. Stalking victims are significantly more likely than stalking victims to live in fear for their personal safety and to carry something to defend themselves. Half of stalking victims report their stalkings to the police. A quarter of stalking cases reported to the police result in suspects being arrested. While there's some evidence that anti-stalking laws have increased reports to the police, more research is needed to determine anti-stalking laws' full effect on reports to the police. The average stalking case lasts 1.8 years, since nearly a fifth of all stalking victims move to new locations to escape their stalkers. Eesh, let's see.
It's tough.
It is tough. It is tough. So this is old. This is not even like the most current data here, but the numbers are frightening, are very frightening. Because the latest data has not been published yet. All right, so let's see if I can. I would like to know that conviction rate. Let me see if I can get the conviction rate of stalkers. Conviction rate of stalking. Stalking the Department of Justice. There's not a lot of recent data. Frightening. Let me see. This is 2018. This is the most. Okay, stalking statutes by element. Okay, let's see. Wow. Lifetime estimate of tactics used by stalkers as a percentage of stalking victims. Left unwanted text voice messages or made unwanted phone calls, 72% of male victims, 76% of women. Threatened physical harm, 70% of men, 68% of women. Approached victims or showed up to places when not wanted, 48% of male victims, 59% of female. Damaged personal property is 51-52. Watched, followed, or spied on victim, 32% male, 44% women. Left unwanted gifts or strange items, 27% men, 38% women. Snuck into victim's car or home, 18% of men, 27% of women.
Wow.
That's fucking awful. God. Oh, let's see.
Just keeps getting worse.
Right? So let's see here. Less than 40% of stalking victims reported that the police took action against the perpetrator. 32% of victims reported that law enforcement spoke to or warned the offender, while just 8% reported that the person had been arrested. Common actions taken by law enforcement in response to stalking were to take a report, 55% of the time, not only just over half the time. Yeah. Talk to or warn an offender, 32% of the time, and to suggest a protection order, 20% of the time. Almost 20% of stalking victims reported that law enforcement took no action in response.
Yep.
Yeah. That's.
What do you want us to do? They didn't put their hands on you. We can't do anything. Which is why most of the people featured on the podcast most of them had to build their own case. They had to gather all of their own evidence, and then they took it to the police, and the police were like, "Oh,
right." And here's
we're
where
going to get a warrant.
Here's where it gets really infuriating. Okay, so there's differences among the states that we mentioned. So 51% of states require that there be 2 or more different instances where the perpetrator followed, watched, or otherwise harassed the victim. And 47% require an established pattern of harassment. Almost half of U.S. states require proof that the victim felt terrorized by the stalking behavior. 24% require proof the victim feared for their safety, and 8% require proof that the victim feared for their life. Further, 53% of states require that the behavior be enough to make a reasonable person feel fear. 20% require that the prosecution proves the victim actually felt fear, and 27% require that the prosecution proves both that a reasonable person would feel fear and that the victim actually did feel fear. So this is probably why it never goes to court very often or very frequently, because how hard is it to prove any of that, really? I mean, it seems very subjective in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Right? What scares you might not scare me. Or again, I know what that person meant when he said that, but you don't.
Right. Right.
So, I mean,
I know what those stickers meant.
Right. Right.
But you're just looking at it like a sticker.
I guess there's some good. While only 37% of states have a stalking specific protection order, 100% of those states have no relationship requirement. Well, that's easy, making it easier for stalking victims to receive protection. And then they say another course of action that you can take is a civil suit. In 25% of states, a stalking victim may choose to sue the perpetrator for monetary compensation to help the victim recover costs resulting from the victimization, including lost wages, medical bills, and relocation fees. A quarter of stalking victims report they've missed more than 10 days of work as a result of their victimization. Gotta love it. Sometimes the law really makes me wonder what goes on.
Well,
yeah. Let me just see something if it says here. In Japan, Netherlands, every country, United Kingdom. Okay.
Your research abilities are just astounding.
Thank you. It says here, so this is the UK's kind of history with stalking and their laws. It said before the enactment of the Protection from Harassment Act of 1997, the Telecommunications Act of 1984 criminalized indecent, offensive, or threatening phone calls, and the Malicious Communications Act of 88 criminalized the sending of an indecent, offensive, or threatening letter, electronic communication, or other article to another person. Before 1997, no specific offense of stalking existed in England and Wales, but in Scotland, incidents could be dealt with under pre-existing laws with life imprisonment available for the worst offenses. In England and Wales, harassment was criminalized by the enactment of the Protection from Harassment Act of 97, which came into force on June 16, 1997. It makes it a criminal offense punishable by up to 6 months imprisonment to make a course of conduct which amounts to harassment of another on 2 or more occasions. The court can also issue a restraining order, which carries a maximum punishment of 5 years imprisonment if breached. In England and Wales, liability may arise in the event that the victim suffers either mental or physical harm as a result of being harassed. In 2012, Prime Minister David Cameron stated the government intended to make another attempt to create a law aimed specifically at stalking. So the Protection of Freedoms Act in 2012 created the offense of stalking for the first time in England and Wales by inserting these offenses into the Protection of Harassment Act of 97. The act of stalking under this section is exemplified by contacting or attempting to contact a person by any means, publishing any statement or other material relating or purporting to relate to a person, monitoring the use by a person of the internet, email, or any other form of electronic communication, loitering in any place, whether public or private, interfering with any property in the possession of a person, or watching or spying on a person. It also covered stalking involving fear of violence or serious alarm or distress. This created the offense of where a person's conduct amounts to stalking and either causes another to fear that violence will be used against them, or conduct that causes another person serious alarm or distress, which has a substantial effect on their usual day-to-day activities. So they got it covered really well there.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S., California was the first state to criminalize stalking in the U.S. in 1990 as a result of numerous high-profile stalking cases.
Yeah, because the celebrities were in trouble.
Yeah, so. It says here, including the 82 attempted murder of Teresa Saldana, the 88 massacre by Richard Farley, the 89 murder of actress Rebecca Schaefer, and 5 Orange County stalking murders in 1989. The first anti-stalking law in the U.S., California Penal Code Section 646.9, was developed and proposed by Judge John Watson of Orange County. Also in 1990, the LAPD began the U.S.'s first threat management unit.
Yeah, they were talking about that on the podcast today. The threat management unit is for celebrities only.
Yes, I've heard this before. I've heard a lot of interesting stories about the Threat Management Unit. Within 3 years after, every state in the U.S. followed suit to create the crime of stalking under different names, such as criminal harassment or criminal menace. The Violence Against Women's Act of 2005 amended the statute, and it put in stalking. As of 2011, stalking is offense under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. 2014, new amendments were made to the Clery Act to require reporting on stalking, domestic violence, and dating violence. Stalking is a controversial crime because conviction does not require any physical harm. The anti-stalking statute of Illinois is particularly controversial. It is particularly restrictive by the standards of this type of legislation. So every state has its thing. It seems like it's amazingly hard to probably prosecute this. And
now we need a database.
Yeah, well. Okay, so that's fun. That's fun. Lots of good stats there that don't really make it sound like the problem's improving at all. And you're
never going to stop people from being criminals. You're never going to stop people from being
right.
It's
a self-reported problem, so God knows what the real numbers are.
You know what? That's the craziest part, is that it's a self-reported problem. And when I said that, I was thinking, well, the numbers for men are probably way higher, but the numbers for women are probably way higher too.
Yeah, it is.
Because how many young girls are out there being stalked right now and don't realize they're being stalked?
Yeah.
They think, oh, that's so cute. I'm the center of his world.
Yeah.
And guys too, like, how many young guys are the same way? I mean,
frightening, very frightening. So while we're on the topic of annoying things, do you have any commentary you want to say on the last couple of days' events that have been going on online? Do you want to?
No.
Do you care to even make a comment? Because my only comment is that everybody should stop commenting. That's my comment.
That's all. I'm going to lead by example.
Okay, just wanted to ask.
Mind my business.
I can't not come on and ask. I have to ask, but yes.
Nope. We're not over there. We're over here.
Agreed. So, okay, guys. So Monday, David Paulides, lost in America, missing 411. People being lost in our national parks, unexplained missing people. Is it aliens?
And Bigfoot.
Is it interdimensional? Who knows? We'll find out. Oh, well, we'll see. Okay, and that's Monday. What?
Oh, I have a theory. It's a ridiculous theory, but hey, it could be true.
Well, write it down and bring it to us on Monday. No giving away the goods till Monday. So if you want to catch up, check out David Paulides, and we'll put links to his stuff in the description so that if you want to play along on Monday and learn all about this as we talk about our national parks in such a wonderful way.
Oh my gosh.
And then again, at the end of the month, June 28th, monthly podcast roundup, Strictly Stalking is the name of the podcast. We will be talking about the highlights from that. So start now if you plan on joining in that discussion. I'm sure we will spoil the hell out of it.
Worth it.
Okay, so tomorrow night, Mary and Colleen react to crap on the internet.
Tomorrow night. Okay.
Yeah, she wasn't feeling well. I got smacked in the face with a tree branch yesterday. I wasn't feeling well. But tomorrow, 6 p.m. on this channel, we will react to the debut of Stop, Wait, What. We will talk about. So we will blind reacts to weird stuff on the internet. Tomorrow is also Colleen's birthday, so you should come on by just to wish her a happy birthday. So that is Thursday. Wow. Okay. Sunday is my birthday. Yay. Yeah. Okay. So what's going to happen on this channel Sunday at 5:00? DJ Danny P, because he's awesome, is going to be taking over this channel and broadcasting his radio show or his DJ set from here. So if you're interested in best music from 70s, 80s, 90s to 2000s, come over here. It's probably going to be more from the 70s to the 90s because that's my age. And he asked for music list. Yes. That's what I gave him. But he is a fantastic DJ. He'll be spinning here, taking over this channel. We will promote more of it. It's fabulous. I love him to death. So happy he's doing this for us. I can't wait. He is, if you want to tune in it's Wednesday. It's 80s night, guys. Best 80s party you can go to without leaving your house. So tune in, Real DJ Danny P. Again, thank you to everybody, all the DJs that we've listed in our links at the bottom of our page here on Twitch. If you're looking for more content, we thank all the streamers, all the gamers, all the DJs who are there. Check out my husband, Man Called Meh. He streams Warframe and Fortnite with his friend, Is That You Toasty, and a couple other people. We thank them so much, the Warframers, for getting us to that affiliate status by following. We thank all of you. Consider subbing to us on this channel now that we are able to offer that to you. I see the emotes and everything are live, so you can use them now in the chat if you want to. So consider a sub. Definitely follow. If you're not subscribed to us on YouTube, please go over there. Same thing. I'll take the L. You can find us there. We will still be streaming concurrently. If you want to drop us a line, you can get us on our socials that are linked in the description. Thank you to everybody in the chat today. Thank you to our moderator.
Thank you.
We appreciate everything you do for us on the moderator side. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I forgot. I'm banging on my desk. I'm going to get a text message. Stop banging on your desk. Okay. I think that's all we have.
Farting sounds.
So again, tune in here tomorrow, 6 p.m. Us blind reacting to things on the internet. I'm sure Angie will be in the chat if she's around, and we might have to drag her in.
Links to whales and
that's right, all that stuff.
Sperm whales.
Sunday, June 6th. Don't start. DJ Danny P taking over the channel at 5 o'clock. I will be. I'll remind everybody. I'll be promoting the hell out of that because it should be a good time. Always a good time.
Always.
And it's like I'm turning 45, guys. So come on over and spend the night. Spend a couple hours hanging out. Birthday party for me. I appreciate it. Love the support. Love seeing everybody there. We'll have a good time. Angie, it's been wonderful as always. Unfortunately, it was a somber discussion, but it was always one that is necessary. We learned a lot today. Got some answers to some questions. Got some more things to think about.
Got some more questions to answer.
Yeah, we'll regroup on that at the end of the month because I'm sure we'll have so many more things to talk about once we.
If you're watching this and you're being stalked.
We will put resources in the description for some places where you can go in order to seek help if you need it.
Don't give up hope. It's not your fault.
Not your fault. Please, please, please do report it. The only way to really push through this is to report it. I know it's scary. I know it's hard to do, but report it.
Report it.
Document, and report it. Having said that, I think it's a good time to go out on that note. Angie, again, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Talk to you later.
Yes.
Have a good night, everybody. Happy hump day. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye, everyone.